Hey, so I'm going to take you back to your childhood and I want you to think about whether this happened to you. You weren't eating as a kid and your mother or your father said, hey, if you love me, you will eat and show. Let me just take you to a relationship sense when you were a little bit older. You were with a girl or a guy and they wanted you to do something, whatever it was, and you didn't want to do it. And when you weren't giving in, they said, hey, if you really love me, you will do this for me. Think about situations where you have probably done it to somebody else, where you wanted something from them and they said, I can't. And like, if I meant something to you, or if this friendship means something to you, then you will do it, or you will give it to me, or whatever it is. This technique is like an absolute colossal mindfuck. It's called guilt tripping someone into getting them to do what you want them to do when they don't really want to do it. How does this work? How do we do it? How do we respond to it? Is something we're going to check out in this week's episode of How Our Mind Works. Let's get into it. All right, so I need to tell you this at the outset. This is a really bad thing to do because think about it, right? What we're doing is, let's take the parent and the child example. So the child exists and the parent exists and the child is not eating. And the parent is telling the child, eat, it's good for you, and the child isn't listening. So then the parent, who's probably very tired or whatever, gets to this position of, right, what is something this child cares about, and that is me as a parent. Of course, the child loves their parent, right? So what if I take this care that this person has or this child has, and I use that as a certain leverage, right? So this care is now being used as a bargaining tool. So now it's not about eating or not, now it's about love. So if you don't eat, that doesn't mean you're not eating, that means you don't love me. So the parent has taken away that aspect of the food and introduced this other far more heavier, this far more riskier, far more important aspect of love. Now the child is like, holy crap, I don't really want to eat, but if I don't eat, that means I don't love my mother or I don't love my father. Okay, then I will eat. Now, you might think, okay, this is harmless, the child needs food, and I just used a technique and I made the child eat. But what is this teaching this child, right? If I ask someone something and they don't give me what I want, then what can I hold as hostage in front of them? What can I use as leverage in front of them? And these same kids grow up to be people who do the same bloody thing, right? We've encountered people like that, and maybe even we have been like that at some point in our lives, right? Because you have to understand, the brain, the situation is hijacked with something that is not related to it. Because the child is not eating, that does not mean that the child doesn't love the parent. Because your girlfriend or boyfriend doesn't give you something that you want, doesn't mean that they don't love you. Just because your friend is not willing to engage with you in a certain interaction or activity, that doesn't mean that they don't value the friendship. Just because your husband or wife is not going to go out of their way to do something that's maybe they're not comfortable with, it doesn't mean that they don't care about you. We have to stop using this guilt technique that's extremely prevalent, especially in a South Asian culture, to try and get people to do things that they don't want to do. We need to stop holding this emotion in front of them as a sort of, if you don't do this thing, what you're telling me is that you don't care about me, or that you don't love me, or that you don't really see me the same way that I see you. We've got to stop doing that. So if you are in a situation where you feel like this is happening to you, instead of feeling all these feelings of, holy shit, does this mean that I don't love this person, I don't care about this person, I don't value this person, what I want you to do is respond with this response, like, this is not about if I care about you or not. This is not about if I love you or not. This is not about if I value you or not. This is about this very specific situation, and that's not something that I want to, I'm comfortable, etc., whatever it is, right? So break away from that, hostage-like thing that they're trying to put in front of you. Break away from that and bring the attention back to the incident at hand. I'd like to say that a lot of people who do this subconsciously, because if we all look at it, man, we've all grown up with this whole guilt tripping technique to get what people want. And parents, as great as they are champions at using this with the best intentions, because they think that I want to do what's best for my child, and therefore I will use whatever means necessary to get it done. And the guilt technique is one of the most powerful techniques, because children naturally feel a lot of love to their parents. And like I said earlier, it's the same kids that grow up and this vicious cycle continues because we start using emotional guilt, emotional manipulation in order to get what we want. And as human beings who care about other people and live in communities and we survive off each other, that's a really powerful tool, and we really need to stop hijacking emotions and using it. So if you're someone who's doing this, try and stop. If you meet someone who's doing this, try and separate the situations and try and help them to see the error of their ways, right? I will see you with our next episode of How Our Mind Works. See ya.